My father didn't yell when he told me I wasn't worth investing in. He leaned back in his leather chair, folded his hands, and said it the way he'd read numbers off a spreadsheet. Calm. Conclusive. No room for appeal. You're smart, Cara, but you're not special. There's no return on investment with you. He said it to my face, in the living room, while my twin sister stood by the window already glowing, already knowing she was the one getting the check. That was 4 years ago. Last May, I stood on a stage in front of 3,000 people. I had a gold sash across my shoulders and a bronze medallion on my chest. My father was in the front row with a camera pointed at my sister. He had no idea the university president was about to call my name. I'm a financial analyst now. I work for one of the top consulting firms in the country. My entire job is quantifying value, identifying what's worth investing in and what isn't. My father told me I had no return on investment. He used the wrong metric. He always did. But that morning, watching his face go still as my name echoed through that stadium wasn't about proving him wrong. It was about something quieter than that. Something that started the night I sat alone in a rented room with a cup of instant noodles, an acceptance letter no one had asked to see, and a decision I hadn't told a single person I'd made. My name is Cara. I'm 22 years old, Bree's twin. In that order. In my family, that was always the order. Bree is 3 minutes older, and several galaxies more visible. She networks the way some people breathe effortlessly, constantly, without thinking about it. She married well in the sense that she married someone the family approved of before she'd been dating him 6 months. She posts photos that get 200 likes within the hour. I majored in economics. I run numbers for a living. When my father told me I had no return on investment, I was 18 years old and had just been accepted to Harwell State University, economics program, full enrollment, $25,000 a year. He was investing $65,000 a year in Bree's education at Crestfield, the private university with the endowment and the alumni network, and the name people recognize at dinner parties. The math was simple. The message was simpler. I did what I do. I put the numbers in a notebook. $25,000 times 4 years equals $100,000. My savings from 3 summers of waiting tables, $2,300. The gap, $97,700. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was devastated, because I was calculating. The room I rented off campus that first September was smaller than my parents' laundry room, one window that faced a brick wall, a radiator that knocked twice every hour through the night like something trying to remind me it was still there. I owned 4 plates, a single pot, and 3 changes of bedding from the thrift store on Birch Street. The desk was a folding table I found on the curb with a sign that said, "Free good condition." It wobbled when I typed. The first night I moved in, I made instant ramen on the hot plate because I didn't have a stove yet, and the campus dining hall had already closed. I set the cup on the corner of the folding table, opened my cracked laptop, the one with the battery that lasted 40 minutes, the one Bree had used for 2 years before it started dying. And I pulled up a website I'd bookmarked 3 times from different devices in case I lost it. The Alderton Scholarship. Full tuition. A living stipend of $10,000 a year, awarded to 20 students nationally. For recipients at partner universities, the right to transfer to one of 12 affiliated schools for the final year, and the honor of delivering the commencement address at graduation. I read the eligibility requirements 4 times. Then I picked up a pen and circled the link in my notebook. The ramen had gone cold. I ate it anyway. To understand what happened on that graduation stage, you need to know 3 things about the years before it. First, the 16th birthday. On the morning we turned 16, I came downstairs to find a red bow on the car in the driveway. Not our car, Bree's car. A 2018 Honda Civic, clean, silver, bought the week before because my mother had seen it at the dealership and thought the color would look good on Bree. I stood at the kitchen window, looking at it while Bree ran outside in her pajamas, screaming. My mother turned to me. She was already holding her coffee. "We couldn't manage 2, she said. She didn't look apologetic. She looked like she was reading from a memo. You understand?" I did understand. That was the problem. I understood so completely that I went back upstairs, sat on my bed, and did not cry, because I had already learned by 16 that crying in that house accomplished nothing. What I didn't understand yet, what took me another 2 years to see clearly, was that this wasn't a financial decision. We had money for ski trips, for Bree's summer in Spain, for matching luggage sets when the family went to Florida. We had money for everything that had Bree's name attached to it. I got a used laptop with a cracked screen. The car sat in the driveway. Bree drove it to school. I took the bus. Second, the family photo. The summer before senior year, my parents hired a photographer for their 30th anniversary party. Backyard event, catered. The whole extended family in attendance. The photographer arranged us on the back porch. My parents are in the center. Bree beside my mother, close, their shoulders touching. I was placed at the far end, next to my cousin Marcus, who was visiting from out of town. The photographer looked through the viewfinder, shifted something, and looked again. "Would you like both daughters to be a little more centered?" he asked. My father glanced at the frame. "She's fine where she is." The photographer nodded. He took the picture. That photo hangs in my parents' living room. Framed, matted, prominent. I am at the edge. My right shoulder is partially cut off by the frame. Bree is next to my mother. 6 months before the college decision, I found my mother's phone unlocked on the kitchen counter. A text thread open to my Aunt Patricia. "Poor Cara," my mother had written. "But Harold's right. She doesn't stand out. We have to be practical." I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. Then I went to the library, not the school library, the public one, 3 blocks away, where nobody I knew went on Saturday afternoons, and I sat at a computer for 4 hours, reading about independent student scholarships. My mother wasn't wrong that I didn't stand out. Not yet. Third Thanksgiving freshman year. I called home from my rented room. The radiator knocked twice while the phone rang. Mom picked up on the 4th ring. "Hello, honey?" Distracted. There was laughter in the background, the clatter of dishes, a gathering happening without me. "Hi, Mom. Happy Thanksgiving." "Oh, yes. Happy Thanksgiving, sweetheart. How are you?" "Good. Is Dad around? Could I talk to him?" A pause. Then, muffled but clear, my father's voice. "Tell her I'm busy." My mother came back. Her voice was brighter now, a brightness she'd manufactured in the 2-second gap. "Your father's just in the middle of something, honey." Victoria was telling the funniest story. Not Bree. Victoria. She called her Victoria when she wanted me to hear the whole name. "It's fine, Mom. Are you eating enough? Do you need anything?" I looked at my desk. The cup of noodles from last night, still sitting there. The library book I'd borrowed because I couldn't afford to buy the textbook. The economics problem set I'd been working on since 6 in the morning. "No, I'm good." "Okay. We love you." "Love you too." I hung up. Then I opened Facebook. The first thing in my feed, a photo Bree had posted 20 minutes earlier. My parents and Bree at the dining table. Candles. Turkey. Good china. A caption that said, "Thankful for my amazing family." I zoomed in on the photo. 3 place settings. 3 chairs. The 4th chair, the one that had been mine since I was 8 years old, was pushed against the wall. Not waiting, not reserved, pushed back, out of the way, like they'd needed the space. I sat with that for a long time. Something shifted in me that night. Not broke. Shifted. The thing I'd been carrying around, the longing, the reaching, the perpetual hope that they'd eventually see me, it didn't disappear. It just changed shape, hollowed out. And what was left, in the hollow, was something cleaner. It felt like clarity. There's one more thing that happened that year. One scene I've never been able to fully set down. Spring semester, junior year. Bree came home for a long weekend. She was in town to tour the Crestfield campus. She'd been accepted early, months before I got my Harwell letter. We were all at the dinner table. Mom had made pot roast, the good kind, the kind she only made when there was a reason. Bree spread out her housing options on the table between the serving dishes. Glossy brochures, floor plans, photos of dorm rooms with natural light and built-in closets. "If I do the suite option," Bree said, "it's another $2,000 per semester. But Mom, the bathroom is private." "Done," Mom said. She didn't look at Dad. She didn't look at me. She just said "done" the way you say it when the answer was already yes before the question was asked. "And the meal plan, the premium one, has more flex dollars. Get the premium." I was sitting directly across from Bree. She glanced at me once, just briefly, the way you glance at someone when you're aware they're in the room, but you don't want to acknowledge what the room currently is. Then she looked back at her brochures. I ate my pot roast. I didn't say anything. What was there to say? That I would be calculating how to afford a shared bathroom in a house with 4 other students I didn't know? That I had started rationing grocery trips to every 10 days? Nobody asked. Nobody looked. I cleared my own plate when I was done. Wash it at the sink. Good night. In my room, I opened my laptop, the cracked one with the dying battery, and pulled up the scholarship database I'd been working through for 3 weeks. I added Bree's tuition, room and board, and meal plan to a spreadsheet, $67,000 that year, including the suite and the premium meals. Then I wrote my own number on the next line. Ling Mei Yuan. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I kept searching. My mother wasn't always like this. When I was 9, she stayed up the whole night before my spelling bee. We sat at the kitchen table together. She braided my hair into a French braid while she quizzed me on the word list. She kept mispronouncing things on purpose to make me laugh. Accommodate. ACCO mov date. She was terrible at it. I kept correcting her. I won 3rd place. She put the ribbon on the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a pineapple. I don't know what happened between that kitchen table and everything that came after. Maybe she decided at some point that investing in both of us was too much, that she only had the emotional capacity for one. Maybe my father made that decision for her. Maybe she just chose. Either way, one morning the ribbon was gone and the refrigerator had photos of Bree's swim meets. I kept the memory anyway. It was the only thing I was never going to give back. The family meeting happened on a Tuesday in April, the year we graduated high school. The acceptance letters had arrived the same week. Bree's to Crestfield University, private, prestigious, $65,000 a year. The school she'd been talking about since sophomore year. Mine to Harwell State Solid Public Program, ranked in the top 20 nationally for economics, $25,000 a year. Still expensive, but manageable. Dad called us into the living room at 7 in the evening. He sat in the leather armchair, the one he always sat in when he wanted to signal that something was a decision, not a discussion. Mom was on the couch, hands folded. Bree stood near the window, already electric with anticipation. I sat across from him, still holding my acceptance letter. Victoria, he began. He always called her Victoria at formal moments, like she had a title. Will cover your full tuition at Crestfield, room and board, everything. Bree made a sound. Mom smiled. My father turned to me. Cara, we've decided not to fund your education. The words arrived correctly. I parsed each one. I understood them individually. Together they made a sentence I needed 4 more seconds to assemble. I'm sorry? Victoria has leadership potential, he said. She networks well. She'll build connections that compound over time. It's an investment that makes sense. He paused. You're smart, Cara, but you're not special. There's no return on investment with you. I looked at my mother. She was studying the pattern on the rug. I looked at Bree. She was already texting someone, both thumbs moving. So I just figure it out myself, I said. You're resourceful, he shrugged. A single shoulder barely moving. You'll manage. That was all. The meeting was over. Nobody looked up when I walked out of the room. The conversation resumed at the same volume, the same temperature. Through the hallway wall, I could hear Bree asking Mom something about the Crestfield campus housing portal. I sat on my bed. I didn't cry. I'd cried enough over the years. Enough over missed birthdays and hand-me-down gifts and being cropped out of family photos. There was no more room for it. Instead, I got up, went to my desk, opened the cracked laptop, and started doing what I was apparently going to have to do alone. The unannounced visit happened in the fall of my sophomore year. I didn't know she was coming. She texted from the parking lot. In the area. Thought I'd say hi. That meant the opposite of what it said. My mother was never in the area. She drove 45 minutes to get to campus. She knocked. I opened the door. She looked past me, into the room. The folding table with the wobbling leg. The 4 plates are stacked by the hot plate. The shelf above the window. She looked at the shelf. 12 cups of instant ramen. Lined up. Her face changed. Not concerned. Something more calculated. She crossed her arms. So this is what your independence looks like. Not a question. I'm doing fine, I said. Cara. She stepped inside without being invited. She walked to the shelf and touched one of the cups. I picked it up. I turned it over. Set it back. This is what you're choosing. I eat other things. She turned around. The expression on her face was one I'd been reading since childhood. The expression of someone who has arrived with a conclusion and is now cataloging evidence. Your father was right to be concerned, she said. You can't sustain this. Cara, this isn't, Mum. This is what happens when you insist on doing things your way. The room went quiet. The radiator knocked once. I looked at the shelf. 12 cups of ramen, precisely arranged, each one paid for with money I had earned. The folding table I'd carried 4 blocks from a curb, the secondhand blanket I'd washed twice before sleeping under it. She had walked into my room and looked at every piece of my survival and turned it into a character flaw. I have a 3.9 gigapascals, I said. I have 3 jobs. I'm applying for a scholarship that would cover everything. I manage fine. She picked up the ramen cup again, turned it in her hands, set it down. I just worry about you. She left 40 minutes later. On the way out, she paused at the door. You know you could always come home. I didn't answer. I heard her car start in the parking lot. I stood at the window and watched it pull away. Then I turned back to my desk, to the Alderton application open on the screen, and I kept writing. I didn't tell anyone about the application. Not Joe. Not even Dr. Elaine Marsh, who had been talking to me about Alderton for 3 months and who would eventually become my nominator. I carried it alone the way I carried everything, not out of pride, but out of practice. In my family, announcing something before it happened was a way of inviting someone to explain why it wouldn't. I had stopped inviting that. By junior year, I had 3 jobs, of 4, and a nomination letter from Dr. Marsh that I read 7 times in the library bathroom before I filed it with my application. The night I submitted at 11:47 p.m., from the 3rd floor library carrel that had become something like mine, I didn't celebrate. I made a cup of ramen on the hot plate back in my room. Ate. Went to sleep. The email arrived at 6:47 on a Tuesday morning in September of my senior year. Subject: Alderton Scholarship Foundation Final Round Notification. My phone was on the desk. I read it standing up, still wearing the sweatshirt I'd slept in. 50 finalists. 20 winners. An in-person interview in New York City. I sat down on the floor with my back against the bed. The radiator knocked twice. I was 800 miles from New York. My bank account had $847. I sat there for a long time, doing the math in my head the way I did everything methodically, in order. Flight, $400 minimum, last minute. Hotel, whatever was left. Rent was due in 2 weeks. If I used the emergency reserve, someone knocked on my door. Joe. Wearing the giant striped bathrobe she refused to get rid of. Holding 2 mugs of coffee. She looked at my face. What happened? I showed her the email. She screamed. Actually screamed the kind that makes neighbors check their walls. You're going, she said. Joe, I can't. Bus ticket. $53. Leaves Thursday night. Arrives Friday morning. She sat down across from me on the floor, cross-legged, the coffee steaming between her hands. I'll lend you the rest. I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm telling you. She looked at me with the directness she reserved for things she actually meant. Cara, this is your shot. There won't be another one shaped exactly like this. I took the bus. 8 hours overnight in a seat that smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. I arrived at Port Authority at 5 in the morning with a stiff neck, a borrowed blazer from the Harwell thrift store, and scuffed shoes I'd polished with a wet cloth in the bus bathroom. The interview waiting room was the kind of space that made your posture change when you walked in. Marble floors, glass walls, people in suits that fit, candidates with designer portfolios, parents who had driven in the night before and were waiting in the lobby downstairs. I found a chair, sat down, looked at my shoes. Then I heard Dr. Marsh's voice in my head, not the motivational version, not the speech version. The version from 3 months ago, after office hours, when I'd told her I didn't know if I belonged in this conversation. You don't need to belong, she'd said. You need to show them what belonging costs you. I looked at the door to the interview room. Then I walked through it. 2 weeks later, walking to my morning shift at the campus cafe. The phone buzzer. Subject: Alderton Scholarship Foundation decision. I stopped on the sidewalk. A cyclist swerved around me, swore, kept going. I didn't hear him. I opened the email. Dear Miss Cara, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected as an Alderton Scholar for the class of 2025. I read it 3 times, then a 4th. Then I sat down on the curb, not gracefully, not slowly, just sat down, and I cried. Not quiet tears, The other kind. The kind that comes from the body, not the eyes, the kind that means something has been held too long and finally let go. 3 years, 3 jobs, 4 hours of sleep, ramen and library books, and the folding table with the wobbling leg. All of it was pouring out on the sidewalk outside the morning grind at 7:15 on a Tuesday morning, while strangers walked around me. I was an Alderton scholar, full tuition retroactive grant eliminating my remaining debt, living stipend of $10,000 annually, and the clause that stopped my breath when Dr. Marsh called that evening the option to transfer to any Alderton partner institution for the final year. Crestfield University is on the list, she said. Her voice was careful. She knew what she was handing me. I stay very still. If you transfer, she continued, you'd graduate with their honors distinction, and the Alderton scholar delivers the commencement address. I thought about my parents, about the front row seats they'd already booked for Bree's graduation, about the flowers, the restaurant reservation, the photographs. I'm not doing it for them, I said. I know. Crestfield has the better econometrics program. It does. I paused. But if they happen to be in the audience, that's their business, she finished. I made the decision that night, told no one in my family. By the time the Crestfield campus felt familiar, by the time I knew which library entrance had the broken card reader they hadn't fixed yet, which hallway had the best natural light in the afternoon, which professor started class at the actual listed time versus the approximate one 6 weeks had passed. 6 weeks of being invisible on a campus where I was technically enrolled. I liked it that way. Let me back up, because the 3 years between that April living room and the semester at Crestfield are not a montage. They don't compress into a sentence about working hard and staying focused. They were 3 years of specific, granular difficulty, and the only reason I'm telling you this is because the people who need to hear it need to know what it actually looks like. It looks like this, sophomore year. Fall semester. I set my alarm for 4:45 every morning. The morning grind opened at 5:30. I was behind the counter at 5:28. I made lattes and drip coffees for 2.5 hours before walking across campus to my first class. Still smelling like espresso, the tips of my fingers stained faintly brown. After class, the economics TA position. Grading problem sets, holding office hours on Tuesdays, trying to explain concepts I'd only fully understood myself the semester before. The professor, Dr. Fenwick, had been skeptical when I applied. She told me she'd never given a TA position to a sophomore. Then I'll be the first, I said. She looked at me over her reading glasses. You're confident for someone who hasn't proven anything to me yet. I know, I said. Give me the semester. She did. By the end of October, she was using my graded problem sets as examples of how to give feedback. Evenings, the residence hall cleaning crew. Weekends only, but the weekends were long. I learned every shortcut in those buildings, which bathrooms actually needed bleach, and which ones were fine with a wipe, which floors the RAs inspected, and which ones they pretended to. I listened to economics podcasts through one earbud while I worked. I was building a library in my head because I couldn't always afford to buy the actual books. The schedule was brutal in a way that became invisible to other people. You stop mentioning it because explaining it takes energy you don't have. Jo was the only one who saw it clearly, because she lived 3 doors down, and sometimes she'd be coming back from a late night when I was already up again. Do you ever sleep? She asked once. 4 hours, I said. 5 if I'm lucky. She stood in the hallway in her bathrobe, keys in hand, looking at me with an expression I didn't have a word for. You're going to burn out, she said. I'll burn out after I graduate. She pushed something into my hands. A protein bar, the kind she kept in her bag. Eat that. Then she went to bed. I ate the bar at my desk while I studied. There were 2 moments I almost broke. The first, February of sophomore year. I fainted behind the coffee counter. Just went down. Woke up on the floor with the shift manager crouching over me, saying my name and the sound of the espresso machine still running behind her. The doctor at the campus clinic said dehydration, exhaustion, both. She told me to rest. I was back at work the next morning. The second, spring of junior year. I sat in my car, Jo's car. She'd lent it to me for an interview in a parking lot off campus and cried for 22 minutes. Not because of anything specific, because of everything accumulated. 3 years of mornings before sunrise and nights past midnight. 3 years of calculating, planning, executing. 3 years of doing something enormous without anyone in my family knowing or caring or asking. I cried until I was empty. Then I wiped my face with the sleeve of my interview blazer, started the car, and drove to the interview. I got the job. The email about the Alderton final round came the following September. I've already told you about the bus ride, the borrowed blazer, the waiting room full of polished candidates. What I haven't told you is what happened in the interview itself. There were 3 people across the table. 1 woman, 2 men. The kind of panel that expects polish, that's used to candidates who've been coached, whose parents called in favors to prep them, who've done mock interviews in hotel conference rooms the night before. The first question was standard. Tell us about a challenge you've overcome. I thought about giving the version that sounds good in an interview. Then I thought, no, give them the true one. So I told them about the folding table I found on the curb. I told them about the battery that lasted 40 minutes. I told them about the ramen shelf and my mother standing in the doorway of my room, picking up a cup, turning it over, setting it back down. The way she looked at me and said, "So this is what your independence looks like." She wasn't wrong that I was living on ramen, I said. She was wrong about what it meant. The woman on the panel set down her pen. What did it mean? She asked. That I had my priorities in the right order, I said. The money I wasn't spending on food was going to textbooks. The time I wasn't spending on sleep was going to studying. I wasn't surviving. I was optimizing. She picked up her pen. The interview lasted 47 minutes. The standard slot was 30. Jo was waiting outside when I got back to campus. She was sitting on the front steps of our building, bundled in her yellow coat, holding 2 coffees. I walked up. She handed me one. How'd it go? Good, I think. She nodded. Looked at me over her cup. I'm proud of you, she said. Whatever happens. I sat down beside her on the step. The campus was quiet at that hour late afternoon, the pause between classes and dinner, the particular stillness of an October day going golden. Jo, I said. Yeah, thank you. For the bus ticket. For all of it. She looked at the quad, at the trees changing color at the edges. You'd have done it anyway, she said. You'd have found another way. You always do. Maybe. Definitely. She sipped her coffee, but I'm glad you didn't have to. We sat on the step until the light changed and the campus came alive again around us. 3 weeks into the semester, I was on the 3rd floor of the library, tucked into the corner carrying a constitutional economics textbook and a highlighter running low on ink, when I heard a voice that made the muscle behind my sternum go tight. Oh my God. Cara. I looked up. Bree. 3 feet away. An iced latte in one hand, her mouth slightly open. Wearing the cognac leather jacket she'd gotten for Christmas. She hadn't changed. Or she'd changed in the way people do when they've been comfortable, a little softer, a little more settled into themselves. I closed my book. Hi, Bree. You what are? She couldn't form a complete sentence. How long have you been here? Since September. Since Mom and Dad didn't say anything. Mom and Dad don't know. She blinked. What do you mean they don't know? Exactly what I said. She set her latte on the carrel beside me, still staring. But how? They're not. Are they paying for... No. Then how did you get into... Scholarship? The word sat between us. I watched it register. Confusion first. Then something that moved through disbelief and came out the other side as something older. Something that looked for just a second like shame. You won the Alderton, she said. Not a question. Yes. Cara. Her voice dropped. Why didn't you tell anyone? I looked at her. My twin sister. The one who'd gotten everything I hadn't. The one who had stood by the window at that living room meeting, already glowing, already knowing. The one who had never once in 4 years asked me how I was paying for school. Did you ever ask? I said. Her mouth opened. Closed. I gathered my books. I have class. Cara, wait. She touched my arm. Do you hate us, the family? I looked at her hand on my sleeve, at her face, at the genuine confusion there, the genuine not knowing, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Not anger, not satisfied. Something closer to grief. No, I said. You can't hate people you've spent 4 years learning not to need. I pulled my arm free and walked to class. That night, my phone had 11 missed calls. I silenced them all. Bree called home immediately. She told me this later, after everything. She'd barely been through her apartment door. Glenn, she's here. Cara is at Crestfield. She's been here since September. According to Bree, the silence on the other end lasted a full 10 seconds. Then my father. That's impossible. She doesn't have the money. Scholarship. She's not scholarship material. He called me the next morning. First time he dialed my number in 3 years. I answered because I wanted to hear what he would say. Francis. He called me by my full name when he was arranging things. We need to talk. About. You're at Crestfield. You transferred without telling us. I didn't think you'd care. A pause. Of course I care. You're my daughter. Am I? The words came out flat. Not heated, just accurate. You told me I wasn't worth the investment. That was 4 years ago. I know. Silence. We should discuss this. At graduation, we're coming for Bree's ceremony, and I know you— I'll see you there, Dad, I said. I hung up. He didn't call back. I had 3 weeks until graduation. I spent them finishing my thesis, walking the route between the econometrics building and the library until I could do it without looking up, and meeting once a week with Dr. Marsh on video call to go over the commencement address. She had a way of listening to drafts that made you hear them differently, not critiquing exactly, more like holding up a mirror. She'd sit back when I finished reading and let the quiet do something. What are you actually trying to say? She'd ask. That you can build something from nothing. And what's the part you're not saying? I didn't answer for a long moment. Outside her office window, I could see it in the video frame. A magnolia tree had started blooming. That you learned to not need the people who told you couldn't. Then say that. I rewrote the 3rd section that night. Jo drove up for graduation. She arrived the evening before with a new dress in a garment bag navy blue. Simple, with pockets and a bottle of sparkling water with a ribbon on it because she knew I didn't drink before important things. You look like a CEO, she said, holding the dress up against me. I feel like I might actually throw up. Same energy. She hung the dress on the back of my closet door. Cara. You've been preparing for this your whole life. She said it the way she said things she meant, without ceremony, without performance. You just didn't know it was called that. I looked at the dress. The night before graduation, I couldn't sleep. Not from nerves. Or not only. I lay on my back staring at the water stain on the ceiling that looked like a cloud or possibly a rabbit, and thought about what would happen when I saw them. Whether the old ache would rush back. Whether standing in the same room as my father would make me 16 again, standing in the kitchen watching my sister drive away in a car that should have been both of ours. What I found, at 2 in the morning, was simpler than I expected. I didn't want them to suffer. I didn't want them to see me succeed and feel pain. I just wanted to say something true. In front of people. Out loud. After 4 years of doing everything quietly, the applications, the jobs, the overnight bus, the scholarship, the transfer, the semester at Crestfield, I wanted one thing that wasn't quiet. I fell asleep just before 4. What I didn't know until much later. Bree had not told our parents about the Alderton. She'd told them I was at Crestfield. She'd told them I'd transferred on scholarship. But she hadn't told them about the honor distinction, or the commencement address, or the gold sash and the medallion. She told me why, the following year. I didn't know if you wanted them to know. You could have asked me. I know. A pause. I was also scared of what Dad would say. He would have made it about him. I looked at her across the coffee shop table. You knew? I said. You knew what he was like? I always knew. She held her cup with both hands. I was the one he wasn't like that to. So I told myself it wasn't happening the way it was. It was easier. The emotional reversal I hadn't been expecting. Not a confession of cruelty. A confession of avoidance. She had known. She had simply looked away. That still hurt, I said. Knowing you knew. I know. She didn't try to walk it back. I'm sorry. We sat with that for a long time. The coffee shop around us kept moving. Someone ordered. The espresso machine hissed. The door opened and closed. Everything is normal. Everything continues. Can I ask you something? I said. Yes. Did you know about the text? The one Mom sent Aunt Patricia. Poor Cara. She doesn't stand out. We have to be practical. Bree looked at her coffee. I didn't read that specific text, she said, but I overheard a conversation. Something like it. Maybe 2 years before college. And you didn't say anything. Nah. Not to me. Not to them. No. She looked up. Her eyes were steady. She wasn't trying to deflect into crying. I told myself you were handling it. You always seemed like you were handling it. You were always so capable, so self-contained. I convinced myself you didn't need me to say anything. And I think I was also afraid that if I made a fuss, Dad would take it out on you. That drawing attention to it would make things worse. That was not your decision to make. I know. I needed someone to say something. Even once. Even just I stopped. Looked at the street outside. Even just asking if I was okay. That would have been enough. Just one person on the inside asking. She absorbed that. Didn't rush to fill the silence. I'm sorry, she said finally. For being quiet. For the car. For the trip to Spain. For every Christmas and dinner and family photo where I stood in the center and didn't look sideways to see where you were. I can't undo those. I know you can't. But I'd like to try to be different. If you'll let me. I looked at my twin sister across a small table in a coffee shop we'd never been to together before. At the person who had been given the frame I'd been cropped out of. At the person who had taken the car, and the trip, and the front row seats, and the 4-year education, and who had managed, somehow, to absorb all of it without once looking directly at what it cost me. Not malicious. Not cruel. Absent. Willfully absent. Both things can be true. Both were. I didn't choose the family I was born into, I said. Neither did you. That doesn't absolve me. No, I said, it doesn't. She nodded. No crying. That was the part that meant something, that she stayed in the discomfort instead of reaching for an emotion that would have let her off the hook faster. Maybe she was learning that now. Maybe that was enough to start. Can we try? She asked. I looked out the window at the street. A woman was walking a dog that had stopped dead on the sidewalk and was refusing to move. The woman stood there waiting with the patience of someone who had done this before. Yeah, I said, we can try. The deterioration happened the way it always does in families like mine. Slowly, from the inside, visible only to the people close enough to notice. I wasn't tracking it. I got pieces of it in the way you get news about people you used to live near. Through other people, in passing, without seeking it out. My cousin Marcus mentioned at a family gathering that my father had seemed quieter. Not sad exactly, he said. More like something went out of him. He'd stopped telling the story about his daughters at dinner parties. He used to tell it constantly. Bree at Crestfield, Bree's network, Bree's future. After graduation he stopped. He didn't mention either of us. Aunt Patricia called my mother the month after the ceremony. According to Bree, my mother didn't pick up. Called back 3 days later and said she had a migraine. The women from the country club kept asking about me. About Alderton. About what I was doing in New York. My mother had no answer that was both true and flattering. So she said very little. Which, in a social circle built on saying things, was its own kind of consequence. My father went to his office the Monday after graduation and found his assistant had printed a transcript of the speech off the channel that had posted it. It had been shared tens of thousands of times. She'd put it on his desk without comment. He left it there for a week. Then he threw it away. But according to Bree, when he got home that graduation evening, he sat at the kitchen table alone for the rest of the night. He didn't work. He didn't watch television. Just sat. I thought about that for a long time after she told me. A man who had organized his entire worldview around the concept of return on investment, who had looked at his daughters and sorted them into columns, the promising asset and the write-off, who had put $250,000 into one column and zero into the other and called it practical. Sitting alone in his kitchen after watching the write-off deliver the commencement address at the university he'd paid for with the other daughter's column. Sitting and doing nothing. I didn't feel triumph. I felt something more complicated, something that had grief in it, and waste, and the beginning of something I didn't have a name for yet, something that might become pity, eventually. Something that might become forgiveness, in its own time, at its own pace. Not yet. But the container was there. That was something. Graduation morning arrived with the kind of weather that feels almost scripted. Perfect blue sky, the sun is high and clear. The kind of day that makes the outdoor stadium look like something from a photograph. I arrived through the faculty entrance at 8:15. My regalia was different from the general graduates. The standard black gown, yes, but across my shoulders, the gold sash of valedictorian. And pinned to my chest, the Alderton Scholar medallion. Bronze, heavier than it looked, engraved with a motto I had memorized the first time I read it. By merit, not inheritance. I took my place in the VIP section at the front of the stage area, reserved for honors students and speakers. 20 feet away, in the general graduate section, Bree was taking selfies with her friends. She saw me. She didn't look surprised. She looked like someone who'd been carrying a secret, and had just been relieved of it. She mouthed something. It might have been good luck. It might have been I'm sorry. From 20 feet away, in a stadium filled with noise, I couldn't tell. I nodded. In the front row of the audience, dead center, the best seats in the house, the ones reserved for families of honors, graduates, my parents. My father in his navy suit, the one he saved for weddings and events that mattered. My mother is in a cream dress, a massive bouquet of roses in her lap, pale pink, the kind you order specially. Between them, an empty chair, probably for bags and coats. Not for me, never for me. My father had his camera out already, adjusting the lens, pointing it toward the general graduates section where Bree was standing. My mother was waving at someone across the aisle, already in the performance of the proud parent. They looked so certain. 3,000 people took their seats. The hum of the crowd settled into something organized, anticipatory. The university president approached the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Crestfield University's class of 2025 commencement ceremony. Applause. Cheers. The organized chaos of 1,000 family groups all managing their emotions at the same time. I sat with my hands in my lap, completely still. The ceremony moved through its stages. Honorary degrees, faculty acknowledgements, the usual pageantry that belongs to these mornings and that somehow never feels redundant because for the people in the chairs, this particular morning happens exactly once. Then the university president returned to the microphone. It is my great honor to introduce this year's valedictorian and Alderton Scholar. I felt my pulse shift. A student who has demonstrated extraordinary academic excellence, uncommon resilience, and a quality of character that in my 22 years at this institution, I have encountered perhaps twice. In the front row, my mother leaned toward my father. She whispered something. He nodded without looking away from the viewfinder. Still pointed at Bree. Please join me in welcoming Cara Townsend. One suspended second. The kind where the air changes. Then I stood. 3,000 pairs of eyes found me as I walked from the VIP section toward the stage. My heels on the stage floor, each step sounding deliberate, measured, louder than I expected. The gold sash moved with each step. The medallion caught the morning light. I watched my father's hand freeze on his camera. The viewfinder he had been pointing at his other daughter now hung useless at his side. My mother's bouquet slipped sideways. She grabbed it. Her face went through 4 expressions in perhaps 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, disbelief, and then nothing. A flat, blanked stillness, like a screen going dark. Bree's head turned toward the stage. Her jaw dropped. She said my name. I could read it on her lips from the podium. Cara. I adjusted the microphone. 3,000 people applauded. My parents did not. They sat completely still, like something had pressed pause on the room around them, while everyone else kept moving. For the first time in my life, they were looking at me. Not at Bree, not through me, not past me toward something more interesting. At me. I let the applause fade. Then I leaned into the microphone. Good morning, everyone. My voice was level, steady as a pulse. 4 years ago, I was told I wasn't worth the investment. In the front row, my mother's hand went to her mouth. My father's camera remained at his side. I was told I didn't have what it takes. I was told to expect less from myself because the people around me expected less from me. 3,000 people sat in the quiet that followed a sentence no one expected. So I learned to expect more. I spoke for 17 minutes. I spoke about the 3 jobs, the 4 hours of sleep, the ramen dinners are in a room smaller than my parents' laundry room, about what it means to build something from nothing, not to prove anyone wrong, but because you need to prove yourself right. About the overnight bus and the borrowed blazer and sitting on a curb on a Tuesday morning in front of a coffee shop and crying in a way that only happens once, when something enormous has finally confirmed what you quietly believed about yourself all along. I did not name anyone. I did not point at the front row. I didn't need to. The greatest gift I received wasn't money or encouragement or anyone believing in me before I believed in myself. My mother was crying. The real kind, not the photogenic kind that happens at weddings and is beautiful in pictures. The other kind, the greatest gift, was the absence of those things. My father sat motionless, staring at the podium. His camera is still at his side. Because it meant that everything I built alone. And nothing that is built alone can be taken away. I paused. Let the silence do something. 3,000 people, not moving. The kind of silence that has weight. To anyone who has ever been told you're not enough. I looked out at 3,000 faces, at other graduates who'd struggled, at parents who'd sacrificed and showed up and stayed, at the friends who'd said yes when anyone else would have said wait, at Joe, somewhere in the upper section, who I couldn't see but could feel who I knew was probably gripping her program with both hands. And my parents in the front row, they looked smaller, somehow, than they had when I walked onto the stage. The navy suit, the cream dress, the roses, pale pink, still in my mother's lap but slipping sideways, forgotten. My father's camera was on his knee, pointing at nothing. You always have been. The applause started before I'd stepped back from the microphone, the kind that wells up from the floor of a stadium, and keeps building, keeps compounding, until it becomes its own thing, separate from the moment that caused it. People rose to their feet. Not all of them, but enough. Rows and rows of people standing, and in the front row my parents, still sitting, still not moving, like they were the only 2 people in 3,000 who hadn't been released yet. I descended the stage. 17 steps. I counted without meaning to. James Alderton III was waiting at the bottom, the foundation's chairman, 70 years old, silver-haired, the kind of steadiness that comes from having done something good for decades. Miss Townsend. He shook my hand with both of his. Brilliant. The foundation is proud to call you ours. Thank you. He held my hand for an extra second. Your parents must be somewhere in the crowd, I said. I should go find them. I crossed the reception area, through champagne and congratulations and families photographing each other in clusters. The dean stopped me. 3 faculty members I recognized from the economics building. 2 students from my Crestfield cohort who I'd barely spoken to during the semester. Everyone had something to say. I said what needed to be said. And then I saw my mother. She was standing at the edge of the crowd, slightly apart from everything. Her roses were in her left hand, stems down. She wasn't holding them like a gift anymore. She was holding them the way you hold something you've realized is wrong for the occasion but don't know what to do with. She was looking at me. Not the way she'd looked at me at the living room meeting. Not with the careful blankness she'd been maintaining for 4 years. She was looking at me the way people look at something they've seen clearly for the first time after looking at it wrong for years. My father materialized beside her. He moved through the reception crowd the way people move when they're trying to reach something and aren't sure they have the right half-reaching, half-hesitating. He reached me while I was still watching him approach. Cara? His voice came out hoarser than I expected, like something had been run through it hard. Hi, Dad. I accepted a glass of sparkling water from a passing server. Took a sip. Waited. The reception noise continued around us. Somebody laughed nearby. A photographer said something about the light. Why didn't you tell us? He said. 4 seconds. Did you ever ask? He opened his mouth. I closed it. My mother arrived beside him. Mascara in long tracks down both cheeks, not the controlled, photogenic kind, the real kind. Baby. Her voice broke on the single syllable. I'm so sorry. We didn't know. You knew enough. I kept my voice even. Not cold. Just exact. You knew I had no money. You knew I was living in a room you could fit inside your walk-in closet. You could have asked what that looked like. You chose not to. That's not, my father started. Fair? I looked at him directly. You told me I wasn't worth the investment. You looked me in the eye and said it. You spent $260,000 on Bree's education 4 years. Full tuition, housing, everything, and you told me to figure it out myself. That's what happened. I'm not angry about it anymore. He flinched. Actually flinched. The movement traveled from his jaw to his shoulder. But I'm not pretending it didn't happen either. My mother reached for me. I took a small step back. Not dramatic. Not theatrical. Just clear. I'm not the same person who left your house 4 years ago, I said. And I didn't build what I built so that we could stand here and agree to forget how it started. Francis. He used my full name. Tell me what you want. Tell me what you want from us and I'll do it. I considered the question. Not as a performance, actually. What did I want? I thought about the Thanksgiving call, the 3 place settings in the photo, the ramen shelf, the borrowed blazer on the overnight bus. The morning I sat on the curb and let 4 years pour out of me onto a sidewalk while strangers walked around. What did I want from the people who had built the conditions that made all of that necessary? Nothing, I said. That's the point. I stopped wanting things from you a long time ago. His jaw moved. I made a mistake, he said. I said things I shouldn't have. You said what you believed. People can change what they believe. Sometimes, I said. Yes. James Alderton moved through the crowd toward us, pausing at various families, working the room with the ease of someone who'd spent decades doing exactly this. He stopped at my shoulder. Extraordinary speech, he said. The foundation is going to be talking about this one for a while. He glanced at my parents, said nothing to them, moved on. I watched my parents watch him go. I watched something arrive in my father's face. Not regret exactly, something larger and slower. The particular expression of a person who has just understood, in full, the actual cost of a decision they made years ago and found that the cost is not something they can compensate for now. He looked back at me. Lost. For the first time I could remember, genuinely, unperformatively lost. Tell me how to fix it. That's not my job, I said. You broke it. You figure out how to fix it. A pause that had length and weight. But I won't block your number. If you want to have a real conversation, not about optics, not about what this looks like to other people, but an honest one, call me. I might answer. Cara. And Dad. I held his gaze. When you call, don't tell me you're proud of me. Tell me you were wrong. Bree appeared at the edge of our circle. She looked at our parents. At me. At the geometry of what was happening between us, the strange, fractured shape of it. Congratulations, she said to me. Thank you. No hug. No tearful moments, no dramatic scene, but no cruelty either. Just two people who shared a birthday, standing in the same place for the first time in 4 years, deciding what the next part looked like. I'll call you, she said, if that's okay. It's okay. I turned and walked away from them. Not running, not escaping. Just moving forward, in the direction I had been moving for 4 years. Jo was at the side entrance, leaning against the wall with her shoes off, her good flats in one hand. Frankie. She only called me that in serious moments. Hey. She looked at my face. You okay? I stood there in the gold sash and the Alderton medallion, in the navy dress with the pockets, in the May sun that was warm on the back of my neck. I took stock of what I felt. Not triumph, not relief, something quieter, something that had room in it. Yeah, I said. I actually am. She pushed off the wall and put her shoes back on. Good, she said. Then let's go get something real to eat. I've been hearing about instant ramen for 4 years and I want a burger. I laughed. First time all morning. It felt like something opening. The question started before my parents left campus. A woman from their country club circle caught my mother near the parking entrance. Diane, I didn't realize Cara was at Crestfield. An Alderton scholar, you must be so proud. My mother's smile went up before her eyes did. We are. Very. How on earth did you keep it a secret? If my daughter won that scholarship, I'd have had it on a billboard. My mother had no answer that was also true. But the moment that I heard about later, the one that apparently landed differently, happened to my father. He was standing near the faculty reception area, still holding his camera, when Richard Calloway found him. Richard was a business partner, someone my father had worked with for 15 years. They'd had dinner together. They'd been to each other's houses. Richard shook his hand. Glenn, that was something else. Your daughter, the Alderton scholar, commencement speaker. He shook his head in that way people do when they mean it. That speech. We've been sending it around the office. My father said something. Bree told me he said thank you. Just that. You must have pushed her incredibly hard, Richard said. To achieve like that, all on her own, working through school, that kind of discipline doesn't happen by accident. You raised that. A pause. We're very proud of her, my father said. Richard clapped him on the shoulder. As you should be. She's going to be extraordinary. He moved on. My father stood in the middle of the graduation reception, surrounded by champagne and congratulations, and he knew because he could not lie to himself in that specific moment that he had not pushed me, that he had done the opposite of pushing me, that Richard Calloway had just credited him with something he had actively worked against. He stood there and could not say a single thing that was true. That was the part that did it, I think. Not the applause, not the standing ovation, not even seeing me walk across that stage with the gold sash and the medallion. It was standing there while someone he respected told him he must have been a good father and knowing, with complete clarity, that he had not been. The questions multiplied over the following weeks. More colleagues, more calls. Saw your daughter's speech online. Incredible story. You must have pushed her hard. He couldn't tell any of them the truth. The social arithmetic was brutal. They had invested $260,000 in the daughter nobody was calling to congratulate them about, and zero in the one everybody had seen at that podium. No version of the story worked. My mother stopped attending book club for a few weeks. My father started taking lunch alone. I didn't track these things actively. They came to me through Bree, who was learning in her own way how to be honest about the family she'd grown up in. "They're different," she said, 2 months after graduation. "I don't know how to explain it. Like something dropped out of them." "That's what happens," I said, "when the version of yourself you've been performing stops being sustainable." She looked at me. "Did you learn that in economics?" "Life," I said. "Same thing, probably." 6 months later, a November evening in my Manhattan studio. The apartment was small, one window, brick wall view, kitchen the size of a hallway. But the lease had my name on it and I'd signed it with a paycheck from Morrison and Associates, where I'd started as a junior analyst in August. My phone rang. The screen said, "Dad." I looked at it for a long moment. Then I answered, "Hello." "Francis." He still used the full name. "Old habit. Thank you for picking up. I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure either." Silence. "I've been thinking every day since graduation," he said. His voice was different. Tired in a real way, not a performing way. Trying to figure out what to say. "Just say what's true." A long pause. I was wrong. The words came out carefully, like he'd been practicing them, but still wasn't sure they'd hold weight. "Not just about the money. About the way I looked at you. The things I said. The years I didn't ask how you were managing. I have no excuse." I listened to him breathe. "I hear you," I said. "That's all? You're not going to tell you how to fix it?" "No. That's yours." A sound that might have been a laugh, broken at the edges. "You've always been the strongest one," he said. I was too blind to see it. "Yes," I said. "You were." We talked for a few more minutes. Nothing profound. A crack of light under a door that was mostly still closed. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was the first time he had called me without needing anything. I'll take it. 2 years after graduation. I'm still in New York, still at Morrison and Associates, promoted twice since I started. Senior analyst now, which means I manage a small team and give presentations in conference rooms with glass walls. And I have to remind myself sometimes that the person who does that is the same person who fainted behind a coffee counter from exhaustion and dehydration in February of her sophomore year. Starting an MBA at Columbia in the fall. Company sponsored. Full. The kid who ate ramen on a folding table would barely recognize the view from where I'm sitting. But she's still here. I haven't let her go. Dr. Marsh called on a Saturday morning in March, just to check in. She does that, periodically sends an email or calls at an unusual hour, always when I've been busy enough that I've stopped noticing the distance from where I started. "How's the city?" "Exhausting," I said. "And exactly right." She laughed. "I heard you're starting Columbia in September." Word travels. "I made some calls," she said. "Not defensive, just honest." "Thank you. How are you?" "Not the career. You." I stood at my kitchen window with my coffee. 8 floors down, the street was doing what it always does, moving, always moving. The particular metabolism of a city that doesn't stop for anyone. "I think I'm starting to believe it," I said. "Believe what?" "That I earned this. All of it. That it's mine and not something I'm borrowing." She was quiet for a moment. "You've earned it 3 times over," she said. "But believing it, that's the part nobody tells you, is a separate project." "Yeah. Are you sleeping?" 7 hours, I said. "Most nights, 7. I could hear the smile. "Look at you." I wrote the check to Harwell State the same week. $10,000, anonymous. First generation and independent students. I asked the financial aid office to direct it towards students working multiple jobs, specifically students who were doing it without family support. The woman in the development office asked, over the phone, what name to put on the fund acknowledgement. "No name," I said. "Just use it." Bree and I meet for coffee once a month. It's imperfect, and getting more comfortable in the way that things do when you're willing to stay in the discomfort long enough for it to change shape. Some months we talk for 2 hours. Some months we run out of easy things after 30 minutes and have to decide whether to go deeper or go home. We usually go deeper. She's in therapy. She mentioned it the 3rd time we met, casually, like she was reporting a change of address. She says I built my identity around being the chosen one, Bree told me. And that when the external validation went away, when there was no one left to perform for, I didn't know who I was. That tracks, I said. You're not going to be gentle about it, are you? Would you rather I was? She thought about it. No, she said, actually no. Everyone's been too gentle with me my whole life. It didn't help. We sat with that. I was so focused on what I was getting, she said. I never asked what you weren't. I know. How do you not hate me for that? Because you didn't design the system, I said. You just lived inside it. So did I, until I couldn't anymore. She nodded. Her coffee was going cold. I'm trying to be different, she said. I don't know if I'm doing it right. Nobody does it right, I said. You just keep showing up. She showed up the following month. And the one after. That's something. This is the part where I'm supposed to tell you what I learned. What the lesson is. What the wisdom is that makes all the rest of it make sense. But I'm a financial analyst. I don't traffic in lessons. I work with returns. Here's the return on 4 years. My father said I had no ROI. He was measuring me against his own metric. Would investing in this child produce something that benefited him? A connection. A reflected achievement. A story he could tell at dinner parties that made him look like a visionary parent. By that metric, he was right. Investing in me produced nothing for him. That's because I wasn't an investment vehicle. I was a person. And I wasn't investing in him. I was investing in myself. In finance, we talk about something called intrinsic value. It's the actual worth of an asset, not what the market assigns it, not what someone else is willing to pay for it, but what it actually produces over time, compounded, measured against itself. My father tried to assess my intrinsic value using the wrong formula. He used a formula that measured my worth against his expected return. A bad investment analysis doesn't make the asset worthless. It just makes the analyst wrong. He measured value by what other people could extract from you, by how well you serve the portfolio of the people already in power. I measure value by what you build, by what compounds, by what you wake up and choose to make, again, every morning, with or without anyone's approval. Those are not the same equation. They were never the same equation. And the world, the actual, running, compounding world, the one that sent a foundation chairman to shake my hand at graduation, while my father stood with a useless camera, runs on the second one. He just didn't know that yet. Maybe now he does. On a Tuesday evening, in October 2 years, 6 months after that April living room, 4 years and 7 months after the folding table, and the cracked laptop and the circled link in the notebook, I stopped at the bodega 3 blocks from my apartment on the walk home from the office. I beat. I bought a cup of instant ramen, got home, set it on the counter. I stood in my kitchen looking at it. Small cup, paper lid, exactly what it had always been. I thought about the shelf in that off-campus room. The 12 cups, lined up, the way I'd arranged them because it made the shelf look less empty. My mother's hand picking one up, turning it over, setting it back. So this is what your independence looks like. The way she'd said it, as if my survival were the indictment. As if choosing to build something from nothing was the proof she'd been looking for that I was doing it wrong. I looked at the cup on my counter. 8 floors below, traffic moved. Somewhere in the building, someone was cooking something that smelled like garlic and butter. The city was doing what it does. I picked up the cup, made it the way I always did, fill to the line. 3 minutes. Stir until the powder dissolves. The same steps in the same order. Ate it at my kitchen window with the lights of the building across the street, reflecting in the glass and the sound of everything continuing below. Finished every last drop. I still make it sometimes. Not because I have to. Because I remember exactly who I was when I ate it alone, when the desk wobbled when I typed, when the laptop died every 40 minutes, when the scholarship application was open in one tab and the meal plan calculator was open in another, and everything was uncertain, except the decision I'd already made. I remember her. I'm not going to forget her. She's the reason any of this exists. Not the grades, not the scholarship, not the title on my business card or the address or the offer from Columbia. She's the reason. She sat on the floor at 2 a.m. with a notebook and a calculator and a gap of $97,700 and did not disappear. She earned every single thing that came after. And I carry her with me. Every day. If you've ever been the one they categorized the difficult child, the dramatic one, the one who was too much or not enough type invisible in the comments, If you've ever built something real while someone told you it wasn't worth trying, type built it anyway. And if you've ever been given a metric that didn't account for everything you actually were, you get to change the metric. The one who decides what you're worth has always been you. It just takes a while, sometimes 4 years, sometimes 40, to fully believe it. I'm still working on it, but I'm working on it for me. Not to make anyone comfortable, not to keep any peace, just for me. Thanks for listening.